What's going on, everyone? The day is October 22nd, 2024, and this is your weekly dose of Retro Yu-Gi-Oh!, the video series where we go through all the upcoming Retro Yu-Gi-Oh! Events happening this week, and also cover the events that wrapped up in the previous week. To start with the events coming up this week, on the 25th, this Friday, there will be a Pleiades Payout number 2 for hat format. That will be a multi-day event that you have to pay money to join, but there will be a money prize for the winner of the event. So, if you do well, you can pay that off. But if you want some more competitive hat format, then definitely join the Hat Alliance Discord server where that will be held and join that event because it should be a lot of fun. There will also be the Toronto Time Capsule number 28 over on the Tournament Nexus Discord server. This is a Tengu Plant event. So if you want some fun Tengu Plant gameplay, that's the one for you. Now, it is a single day event and it's starting at 12:30 EST, so it's more like European time, but if you can make the time for it, they have been very fun in the past, and I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Moving on to Saturday, the 26th, there's a Joey Pegasus event, Joey Pegasus number 3, Cards of Darkness, which will be a very interesting event. Now, I mentioned Joey Pegasus on this series before, but it is the format that takes place right after Android with the introduction of Graceful Charity and Heartbeat Feather Duster and Sinister Serpent, things like that. So there are a lot of crazy things that go on in this format. It's one of the DM formats that is very, very high in variance. So it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is a fun format for those who do enjoy it. And this one will actually have a special theming where if you play Dark Necrofear in your deck, you'll actually be able to get an additional prize. So very, very cool to see that happening. And join the Joey Pegasus Discord server, linked in the description down below if you want to join in on that. Next up, we've got the Edison WCQ St. Louis. This will be an in-person event in the St. Louis area. And more information for that is on the Format Library Discord. So definitely head on over there if you are interested in that and in the area. Lastly, there's going to be the Monster Mash 3 Vampire Weekend number 3. This will be in Vampire format, another DM era format, taking place right after the release of Dark Crisis. And it is a format that's not everyone's cup of tea, but it is a fun format for those who do enjoy it. Very aggressive tempo-based format with 3DD Warrior Lady out, and it is a lot of fun. So this will be the third in a series of format library events that are sort of going with a Halloween theming, which is very, very fun to see. So if you want to join in on some spooky gameplay, definitely join that one there. That's going to do it for the upcoming events. Not too many others that I know of. If you know of any more, let me know down in the description or the comments down below. And I'll try and include more like that from those sources in the future. But that's all I know of right now. And, that still is a pretty good selection, but it's a bit less than there have been in weeks prior, partially because there have been some big events wrapping up recently. So we'll dive into the events that wrapped up this past week now and get into those a bit more. Firstly, we got the Duelist Crown Tournament number 13. This is a hat event with 30 players on the Format Library Discord, which I will be linking in the description down below. But it was a pretty fun one. 30 players joined, as I mentioned before. And for the representation, 7 people were on Geargia, 3 were on Mythic Ruler, 3 were on Artifact Traptrix, 2 were on Lightsworn Ruler, 2 were on Spellbook, 2 were on Ferndy, 2 were on Sylvan, 1 was on Go-Go-Go, 1 was on Anti-Meta Hand, Erratic Ruler, Mermail, Evil Swarm, Artifact Gravekeeper, Bujin, Spear Ghost Trick, and Gladiator Beast Fire Fist. So pretty diverse representation of decks that people brought, but this is one of the appeals of hat format, that it is a very diverse format at this point. So it makes sense why a lot of people drawn to the format would bring a diverse array of decks here. And we'll have to see as more hat events go on if that will get sort of narrowed down to a bit more of a meta set of decks. But still, very cool to see so many decks actually, show up. And for the top 8, or I guess, yeah, this is top 8, I think. It's just kind of weird with the numbering because 9 decks are included, but 1 deck was on the bubble. So a Geargia player bubbled there. And then moving on to the tied for 5th places, we got 1 Sylvan player, 1 Artifact Traptrix player, 1 Spellbook player, 1 Go-Go-Go player. Very neat to see Go-Go actually make it to the top 8 there. For the people tied for 3rd, we got an Infinity player and an extra Geargia player by extra power. And then for the final 2, we actually had Lightsworn Ruler versus Geargia. So actually, let's watch that match now and see how it actually turned out. Diving into the finals match here. We've got Mad Hater versus Texas Sucks. Mad Hater on Geargia and Texas Sucks on the Lightsworn Ruler deck. They're going to go for Raiden milling into a Wolf right away, so that's pretty good. They get to bring that out. Going to start a Spark, Foolish for Lumina, Soul Charge back, 3 here, which is kind of crazy. Then overlay into Lavolval Train, sending the Eclipse Wyvern to banish a Judgment Dragon, then going for Lumina to bring back that Raiden. And that is a pretty good board setup for the Lightsworn Ruler player to start with. Firehand is going to clean up the Lavolval Chain, though, and then bring in an Ice Hand to attack over the Lumina, so not terrible there. And then they'll set a couple of back row here as well. Raiden's going to mill some, and, they're going to banish 2 dragons to bring out the Blaster here. So Blaster will banish the Wyvern, which will get back the Judgment Dragon. Judgment Dragon will go for its effect. But they're going to let that go through, I guess. That's interesting. But I guess it's because they wanted to wait for the start of Spark before going for the Fiendish Chain. Okay, that makes sense. But the Zephyros will be able to bounce back the Judgment Dragon to hand. The Scrap Dragon will be able to pop the Blaster and a back row, but that's going to be a gear. But unfortunately, it won't matter because the Judgment Dragon will still be able to come down Felgrand to protect itself, and there's going to be 5,800 points of damage there. So pretty rough for the Gear player here. And unfortunately, well, Upstart might help, but no, that was not what they needed to get back in this game. So that's going to be it for game 1. Going into game 2 here, we're diving in. And it looks like we've got some hand traps sided in. Allied Justice Cycle Reader is pretty good against this deck. They're going to start with a Gear Arsenal into a Gear Armor, and then set 2 here, pass back. That's pretty good. Soul Recharge is going to pitch 1, draw 2, which is going to be pretty good for Lightsworn players. Well, Lumina to pitch the Necro, bring back a Lumina, and then setting a Breakthrough skill and go into the end of the turn. So hoping that will be enough. They milled the Wyvern to banish the Judgment Dragon, but Gear in the end phase will bring out these 2 and potentially get an overlay going on. Breakthrough skill on 1, but that won't really matter too much. Gear Armor flipping up for a Gear Accelerator. That's what it's called. And going into a Gear to bring out another Gear Accelerator to go into another Gear X to go into another Gear X. And I mean, this is what Gear does so well. So the deck can be crazy if it's able to start off, and it has gotten off to a pretty good start here. And bring out a Gear Armor on top of that. And now things are just, I mean, this is pretty brutal for the Lightsworn Ruler player. They are able to Necrogarden to stave off some damage, but this might not be enough. Cycle Reader is going to banish 2 to stop the Lumina, and yeah, it's going to be pretty bad there. So, yep, going to game 3. Looks like no Cycle Readers here, but there is a DD Crow, so that might serve a similar purpose here. Charge to get the Lumina to hand. And then they're going to DD Crow away the ride into the Lumina, won't be able to bring that back. Gear Armor comes down to try and hit over the Lumina, but the Necrogarden will stop that from going through. Black Ship of Corn will be able to come down in main 2, though, and get rid of that Lumina there. Reincarnation will get back the Lumina, though, so that's pretty good. Especially when these are just 2 set gear. They're going to pitch the Lance and then bring back a Wolf to try and crash into the Black Ship, and that will go through. Lumina will attack in for 1,000, and then it's going to mill in end phase. But Gear will come down, bring out 2 Gear Gianos, and overlaying into Gear Next. Here we are again. Gear Accelerator getting searched out off that. Gear Armor, Gear to bring out 2 more. Getting back the Gear Accelerator with the Gear X, overlaying again for another Gear X. And I mean, this is just insane. Going for the Mark II there to bring back a level 3, and then they get to bring out Acid Golem. They've got the Minecon as well, and that is going to be well over lethal damage there. So very good stuff for the finals here. Very, very intense games. I mean, Lightsworn Ruler did take a match, or a game, I guess. But unfortunately, Gear is just such a devastating resource engine that it was able to just plow through that. Next up, we've got the 2003 Time Capsule 1. This was held on the Fiber Jar in Fiber format, which is a format held in 2003, which makes sense why they're calling it 2003 Time Capsule 1. This tournament series is meant to sort of take the weeks where Tengu is not happening in the Toronto Time Capsules and sort of fill the void with another tournament if you want to play in it. So this is a DM era format, which is very, very fun. It's got quite a bit of a cult following here, and you can play it on the Fiber Jar server, but only 8 people were able to play this time. Still, it's a pretty fun event for a sort of single day event with double elimination. 8 players is pretty decent. So GBO1 with Tomato Control, which is a categorization that the bot sort of assigns to a lot of these DMR decks. So don't take that classification like too strictly, because if you look at the deck itself, you can see that there were some Mage Powers, United We Stand, Limit Removal, a lot of interesting spicy tech here to distinguish this from a typical Tomato Control list. So it remains to be seen whether this can actually take down a bigger event like the monthly Fiber tournaments that happen every month on the Fiber Jar Discord server. But I'm sure that people will be trying to tinker with this thing now that it's won this single day event here. But let's actually dive in. Deck type representation is not really that interesting with 1 Recruiter control player and 7 Tomato control players. But again, the bot sort of misclassifies that a bit. So let's dive in to the grand finals here and see how it actually goes down. Now, this was a double elimination tournament. So, I believe that Prada, Run from Red, that is, had gone undefeated in this, and GBO had to sort of fight their way back into it. So it seems like Run from Red is on Gearfried, another very interesting deck in the format. Painful Choice is going to get a Mystic Tomato here. Just attack into another Mystic Tomato. Now, this is pretty bad for GBO because, one, I mean, that Exiled Force is going to clean things up a bit, but the Mystic Tomato here could have crashed into that Mystic Tomato and then sort of won the Recruiter War because they could just bring in another Tomato to beat over whatever GBO brought out. But This is going to be pretty good as well. Change of Hearting the tomato and then attacking in for 2,800 here. And then tributing off a fair amount of the board. So tributing off that tomato and then tributing off a token and itself, dropping them down to 3,700. Not sure why they chose 3,700, but I guess they wanted to sort of keep some tokens around just in case. Raigeki's going to come down, but IO will get flipped to that, so MST will stop the IO. Unfortunately, a Reborn will bring back that tomato, and GBO's doing a bit badly with just a mage power here, but they can still Dark Hole away that tomato and do okay. But Run from Reds is able to keep chipping in. Witch Black Force will attack into the set, not something out another thing to try and play around Fiber Jar a bit here. Setting a Sangan, passing back. The Witch will switch to attack now and attack into the Sangan now that they've got the Mirror Force of the defense. And now they're going to set the... yeah, no, they can't search out Kaiku here because that is not a search target off of Sangan. But they get to set a Mirror Force and a Mage Power here, and they're able to deal with that pretty nicely. So now the Witch will get to search out a Kaiku, but this United We Stand here can be pretty good, especially with that Mage Power. Buffing this up to 3,400. If this gets through, it will win, and it will get through because there's only one Battle Trap in the format, that's Mirror Force. So if you know you can get in an attack, you can go for it, and GBO is able to claw their way back to victory there. Unfortunately, Pot into Forceful turn 1 is a bit rough, but Run from Red can't really do much more than that. Duo is going to be very good here. I feel like you generally want to go for Duo after hitting into the set, especially if you know that they don't have a Sangan in hand. I guess they could have drawn a Sangan, but like, I feel like it's still better just to go for that. But they're going to bring out a Gearfried here, attack in, and that's going to be met with a Mirror Force there. So playing around the Mirror Force very well. Pot of Greed drawing 2, and then setting a Call and a Scapegoat here, attacking in with Tomato, but that's going to get called back for another Tomato. And now the Recruiter Wars are on. Unfortunately, not too many Tomato crashes here. Just a Witch and a Sangan here, but Fiber Jar will be a pretty good card to set. So they're going to set that Fiber Jar, but Call the Haunted will be able to deal with that Fiber Jar quite nicely, attacking him for 11, but Scapegoat will block off that attack and prevent some more damage. Also, you know, you got Cannon Soldier, you got Snatch Steal, so this is looking to be a pretty big play here, especially when you've got United We Stand as well. Oh my word, there's a lot of damage here. Mirror Force will come down though, you need that Mirror Force to win the game. And, you know, GBO still has some tokens here, so they are still able to recover. Kaiku coming down, hitting into one of the tokens, but Lily will be able to hit over the Kaiku there. GBO pays 2,000 and then deals 16. Snatch on the Lily's going to be pretty decent, but Io will stop that. The Snatch will be able to take back the Lily now, but you've got the MST here, so you're not too concerned about that. Assure Priest will come down and hit over both those tokens there. And then you've got MST for the Snatch to take back the Lily. They choose not to attack into the Lily with the Assure Priest. Lily will attack into the Sangan there for 2,400. Cyber Jar can clean up the Lily though, and they're just going to pass back. Setting 2, but that Duster will clean them up pretty nicely. Setting 1 into what could be a Cyber Jar is very interesting, but you know, it did not quite pay off there either way. Either way, you're getting board wiped, but I think it was ultimately okay. I maybe would have attacked into it just to see, but anyways, you got Scapegoat here, so you're a bit insulated against what Run from Red might do, and Run from Red is pretty low in life, down to 2,200. Now, there's no Ring of Destruction or anything out in this format, so you can't lose to that, but this is a very aggressive format, and so it is important to sort of note when you are at that level. But, you know, this should do it. IO for the Graceful into just attacking in for a ton of damage. Actually, it's not lethal, so it doesn't quite do it. Down to 200, but I assume the GBO cannot get out of this, so they MST for information, and then that is the end of the game. So going into game 3, it seems like GBO drew into some recruiters here, so they're going to set a Rat after pitching some cards from Graceful. Duo will get them to pitch even more cards, so they're going to lose the Creature Swap and the Tomato there. The Kaiku will attack into the Rat, which will bring out a Lily, which can clear the Kaiku here, which is pretty good, or it can just get in damage, which is what they're going to use that Lily for, attacking in for 3,400. Just trying to get in as much damage as you can right now. Exiled will be able to clean up the Lily, though. MST for the back row, it's an IO. They're going to let that IO drop in the standby, so that way they can use the Graceful, summon out this Yada, and attack in for 200. Now, the Premat will be able to stop the Yada here, but GBO has Raigeki, so they're able to clean that up, deal with the Kaiku there, and that will be GG with the Yada Lock here. So very cool to see the Yada Lock actually go off. Yada Lock is something that can happen in this format. It's not the most common thing that happens, despite you know, Yada being a very terrifying card. But it's very, very cool to see when it actually does happen. Forceful sending back that Rhoda there, depriving them of monsters, and then going for a Graceful, pitching a Jinzo and a... I didn't see the other one, but, you know, you're setting Fiber Jar just to sort of set up for a later turn here. So Harvey's on the back row. And I think that mainly to get more information. I mean, actually, you could just, yeah, you could just do this, go for Jinzo, and potentially even Limiter that. Looks like they're not going to Limiter this. because they're in a potentially winning spot right now, and this will be the end of the game. So very, very good stuff from GBO. If I were them, I might have actually just flipped up the Fiber Jar and tried to sort of reset my deck, but they rightfully acknowledged that they were in a very, very good spot, and they didn't want to sort of reset all that progress. So Pot of Greed into Graceful. That's always very nice. Setting a Fiber Jar and a Mirror Force. Cyber are going to get flipped up here, so that will pop the Fiber, which is very, very good for Run from Red. And also will pop a Witch. So Witch is going to get a search after this, and this will allow Run from Red to get very aggressive. Of course, that Mirror Force there will put a damper on what Run from Red can do. But if they've got potential ways to play around that Mirror Force, then things would be pretty bad. Okay, it looks like they did draw into some monsters, so I guess I just missaw. But yeah, they don't really have a way to deal with the Mirror Force anyways, so they're just going to bring everything out and attack, try and draw into a way to do that. They're going to use that Exiled Force to deal with the Sinister, and then they're going to attack into a Mirror Force. But they got the Jinzo for later, so if they wanted to go for Jinzo here, they could have, but instead they're just going to sort of, save the Jinzo for later, which I think is fine. Forceful on the pre-match, setting that back, and then Kaiku coming down to beat over that Sinister Serpent. So Sinister Serpent coming back. And now you potentially have a play here. You can go for Snatch on the Kaiku and then bring out Yada. Try and set up that Yada lock here. And also get some banishes in as well. So Yada's going to go back to hand. And then Snatch on the Kaiku is going to be pretty good. Attacking in for 1800. But Scapegoat will come down, stopping that from going through. So I don't know about just keeping the Snatch on the Kaiku. I might have actually attributed for Jinzo just to sort of... yeah, but I mean, this is just the end of the game, yeah. It doesn't matter anyway. Even if they had committed the Jinzo, that plus Forceful would have been it. But yeah, Yada doing the lock again. That's how the Yada lock goes sometimes in these formats. But again, as I mentioned, Yada is not the most common way to lose the game. But against Gearfried, it can be very good because Gearfried is a deck that sort of lives or dies off the monsters that it gets. So if you're able to clear the monsters pretty easily, then you can sort of get in with Yada without much trouble. And also, if they're bricked on things like Blast plus Chain without anything to use it for, then Yada can definitely go ham there too. So very, very good stuff from GBO and Run from Red. And hopefully this intrigued you about Fire Forum. So if you did enjoy it, head on over to the Fiber Jar Discord server. Next up, we got the Science Sackers #1. This is a Scientist format tournament. Science format, for those who don't know, is the format right after Magician's Force got released, which had Scientists at 3 copies. You had Magical Scientists running around 3 copies. You had Catapult Turtle. You had like a lot of the pieces of the FTK. The FTK is quite popular. Now, as a note, it seems like RetroRot doesn't really know what to do with the decks in this format because it just classified them all as other. But if we look up here, we can see that the second place deck piloted by Lalo here is a Science FTK deck. This is what the deck looks like in this format. No Monster Gate. You can't do anything with that, but you can do a lot with like Metamorphosis, and you can do things with Last Will, Turtle, everything like that. And Last Will is its good version before it actually gets hit into the form that it has in GOAT format. The winning deck list here by Aratos is... I mean, it's basically just tomato control. If you think about it, it's kind of like a good stuff turbo deck. And it does have some things to stop Science FTK exactly, because you kind of need those in the deck. Like Wang Hu's very good against Science FTK because you can't bring out the Scientist or the Turtle when you have Wang Hu up. So that can be like basically an FTK if you just summon it against a Scientist deck. But either way, I would still classify this as a good stuff deck. And as a note, the last 2 Scientist tournaments that have been held, and those are the only 2 Scientist tournaments that have been held, Scientist FTK has not actually managed to win the event, which is I think a good sign for the format. I mean, it's a bad sign that it's in the format, but like still good overall that wasn't able to win. But I will mention that Lalo did go undefeated in the first part of the event, because this was, again, double elimination, and they were going undefeated into the grand finals here. So we'll have to see how Ratos is able to actually beat this deck. They're going to set a Tomato, IO, and MST. I mean, IO is very, very good against the Scientist FTK deck. It basically solos it because they can't activate their combo spells and do all that. But Scientist will be able to clean up this board a bit if you're willing to commit into potentially double Balter. They're going to go for the Scientist into Balter. They're going to go for the Scientist into Balter. And yeah, you kind of got to commit into double Balter, in my opinion. If they got Mirror Force, you're cooked either way. I mean, you could bring out Sentry, but like then you're going down so low on life because you're paying an extra 2,000. So I think this is ultimately the best thing to do. Red is going to pay to keep that IO up because they've got a Reaper to crash into the Scientist and stick around. Tomato will come down and deal a little bit more damage, but the Ring will stop the Tomato. And now you can potentially get in for hand rips here. They're setting the Reborn to play around the rip on the Reaper, but that Yatagarasu will stop any draws from coming through. So that's going to be very good for you here. And the Cannon Soldier doesn't need to come down, dealing 11, but you got the Snatch Steal for the Cannon Soldier if you let the IO go. MSTing one back row, MSTing another back row, and this is going to be pretty brutal here. This is actually the end of the game I think just based on terms of life points there, actually, not even the Yatalock, because you attack in for 1900 and then you deal 1500 more. So that will be it. But the Science of Decay players going first here, and they're able to potentially set up a win. Unfortunately, they were not able to. Generally, when you see Painful, there's some way to construct it, but I didn't quite see the beginning hand that well. So I'm not going to like pause the video just to sort of go back and try and construct that, because that could take some additional time, and we got some more events to cover. So I'll leave it to y'all in the comments to sort of see if you can see a way to actually FDK with Lul's opening hand here. But it went by a bit too fast here. But Wang Yu's going to get set up. Unfortunately, they do have the tribe to clear the Wang Yu, but they're not going to attack into the set witch because they don't want to attack into a witch, right? I think that makes sense. They could also be trying to play around tomato there, I guess, as well. But yeah, Mirage is going to go up as well, which is going to be pretty good, although Aratus does not have a way right now to clear the Mirage, but you're still getting deeper in your deck with every Mirage activation. So they will lose 3 good ones, but they are able to keep the Wang Yu, which again is very, very good against this deck. So with that Wang Yu up, they're probably going to be fine here either way. They're going to bring out another Wang Yu just in case. They're going to attack into a tomato, sending another tomato just to deck them a bit. I guess they've gone through Sangan and Witch already. And that Mirage is going to draw them 2 more. And I mean, this is just so brutal. And this is why Science FDK is a deck that not too many people play, because if you don't draw the FDK and your opponent's just able to get set up, you basically auto lose, which is very, very unfortunate. Call can help out a little bit, but I mean, they're just going to scoop it up. They realize that it's all over there. So yeah, going into game or match number 2, actually, Ratos is starting off first. They open up with Duo and Pot. That's going to be very good. And they're going to Reborn the Catapult Turtle. I think that's a very smart and heads-up play, because if Lalo goes into pre-mat here, they're able to potentially bring back that turtle. They're not going to go for the pre-mat. Well, actually, they do go for pre-mat there, but Ratos did not give them pre-mat, which is very, smart of them to do. And they're going to use the reading of whiffs, but they're still able to bring out a tomato and attack in for 14. Was there a way to potentially do something here? Maybe, I don't know. There might have been some other 5 that you could do, but you don't know Ratos' other back row, so yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. Science FDK can be a bit of a tricky deck to pilot sometimes, especially with unknown information in the world there, but it is going to be pretty good, and they're still able to win that one off the back of a Metamorphosis. So Metamorphosis is very, very good in the deck. If you're just playing triple Scientist, you can pair Metamorphosis with Scientist very, very well. Reading here, hitting a Goblin attack force, so it seems like they've sided in to a bit more of a beatdown strategy, hoping that Aratos' side deck options will sort of come back to bite them here. The Tribe Infected Virus will clean up those spies, and Law is able to hit in for 3,900 here, which is going to be pretty good. Now, the Goblin Attack Force does switch to defense, so you're able to beat over it pretty well, but that Tribe is still going to be a problem. Call the Haunted, though, for the Exile to pop the Tribe is going to be pretty good. Dust Shoot to send back the Scientist, a very, very good side deck card against this deck, because if you can go first, then you can potentially spin back the common pieces that they need. Unfortunately, the Witch will be able to get back the Scientist, but this will be no more draws for Lalo at this point. And then Forceful for that Scientist, and that will be the Yatalock right there. So, yep, we're going on to the next game. A lot of Yatalocks in this episode, but that's how it goes sometimes in some of these DM era formats. Reasoning for the Scientist, and unfortunately that's not the one that you wanted, but Ratos, called 5, which is generally the call that you want to do off of blind reasoning in the Scientist FTK deck. So, yeah, they were able to stop that from going through. Comfy to rip a card out of hand, and Law's going to set card D and call the Haunted to play around in MST, I think, in the end phase, probably. Tomato's going to bring out a Witch, will get popped by Wang Hu, but you still get the search off that, so you're going to get a Tribe here. Going for the Tribe to pop the Wang Hu, and then attacking in to the Breaker. I think that makes sense. You want to keep the pre-mat in hand for other things. The Tomato will be able to bring back, or try and get in for damage, but Wang Hu will come down off that call and hit over the Tribe. You're still able to go for pre-mat for Tribe, but Raigeki Break will stop that. And then Painful Choice is a pretty good draw, but unfortunately, Aratos can sort of pick the worst thing for you there. And this will be a lot of damage here. You still got to ring the Wang Hu, but now you're down to 900 life points. You can't use Scientist, and it's going to be a bit bad for you. Can Soldiers to the set, you do what you have to do. Kill Source again as a set. You do what you have to do, and unfortunately it was not enough, and Aratos was able to win this one. So it's kind of interesting that Scientist FTK had not won either of the Scientist tournaments held. And it's not because people aren't playing Scientist FTK. There are people playing Scientist FTK in each format, and generally, people do make it somewhat far in these events with it. However, I think the issue with Scientist FTK is that if you want it to be consistent game after game after game after game, enough to actually win an event, especially a bigger event, you're not quite going to get that luck. And I mean, this is already a pretty small event, and Scientist FTK is pretty sort of disadvantaged in this size of an event already. So like, I don't necessarily know if it can necessarily translate to bigger events. If this format ever did get big, I don't think it ever will get big because, you know, it's Scientists FTK format, but I do think it is very interesting that in the format that's known for Scientists FTKs, it is potentially not the best deck in the room. Now, as I alluded to earlier, there were some major events that happened this past week, and those events happened in GOAT format. And, you know, the big event that I'm mainly referring to is Worlds. GOAT format Worlds happened this past weekend. It was a very exciting event. But before we get to Worlds and what the results of that were, we've got the last chance qualifier number 3 to talk about. This was the last event. If you wanted to actually get into Worlds and you didn't have an invite yet, this was your last chance to. And it was a pretty exciting event. Now, this was streamed on goatformat.com's channel, so JDZ did the stream of this, and I'll leave a link to JDZ's channel in the description down below. You can watch the stream of this, as well as the stream of the GOAT Format World Championship, and there are some very exciting streams, because these were some very exciting games. As you can see, a wide variety of decks were brought. Chaos Turbo, 13 people had it. 11 people had Warriors, 3 on Goat Control, 2 on Cap Burn, 2 on Chaos Control, 1 on Earthbeat, 1 on Last Turn, 1 on Reeling Gate Turbo, and 1 on Panda Burn. If we look at the top cut here, we've got a lot of Chaos Turbo here. I mean, that makes sense. But the Chaos Turbos did not make it to the first and second places here. We had Chaos Control in third as well, which is interesting to see. But then we had Warrior Player as second, and then Cap Burn as first. Although I wouldn't necessarily call this Cap Burn. If you look at this list, it's not playing Cat. It is playing some elements of Burn. It's playing Level Limit Area B to stall things out. And then in the side, you've got the Triple Chain Energy, Secret Barrels, etc. But this is not a Cap Burn deck, or at least not one that I would call that. I'm not sure what to call this deck. I think people were calling it like random dot deck in the stream chat for what I tuned into. But you know, no matter what you call it, I'd call it cool. You know, I think it's a very interesting list, very innovative list. It's playing Stein, it's playing a lot of interesting stuff all at once. And let's see it in action in the finals match, because I feel like that is a good way to actually understand what this thing does. Now, as a note, this was a double elimination tournament. So again, we've got the finals here, and we're diving into it. I believe that, I forget who was undefeated at this point, but we'll have to see. You know, I know that Saiti actually won the entire event, whereas Vive won, Krista did not. So, you know, the first match will be a surprise. Who will win, who will not? But the Zamira will hit over the Sangan, going for Dust Shoot, spinning back a card here. And they're going to bring out a Blade Knight attack in for 2k. That's going to be met with a Scapegoat there. To get out some tokens here. And then Econ taking control of the Zamira, attacking into the Blade Knight, which has 1600 here, but the Mirror Force will stop that Zamira. Exiled Force will come down to eat up that Blade Knight, but that puts a Light Dark and Grave for the BLS here, attacking in for 3000 plus 1900, so 4900 damage. So Sai T is going to drop down to 2k, which is not enough for Cyberstein. They don't have Light and Dark for the BLS, but they can still survive with 100 life points just off that you know, set there, so that way they'd use up the breaker, not the breaker, the BLS on the set. BLS again are going to be used up on the set Cybertime, which was useless to Saiti anyways. Knock on the Serpent though enables VV1 Christo to get in over all those cards, but the snatch on the BLS would have been pretty good, but unfortunately that Dust Tornado would stop that. So very neat stuff. And unfortunately, Saiti did not able to take that one, but they're able to go for Pot here, set a Cyberjar and a T-Roar, and Vivo1 Christo is able to L set as well. True Nade here, but that's going to get MST on the Threatening Roar, unfortunately. Cyberjar is going to get flipped up, though, trying to go for a bit of an aggressive push here. And it's hitting some pretty good ones. I mean, hit a fair amount of monsters there. And you've also got Stein, but Stein cannot deal with the Wanghu that just hit the field. So that's a bit unfortunate, though. Yeah, and you can't summon out these things in attack. I mean, you can summon out the Sangam potentially in attack just to get popped by the Wanghu, but like everything else, if it gets summoned out in attack, you lose it to the Wanghu. So they're going to bring out a Jinzo here and then meta into Darkfire and Carbonala Warrior, equipping the Carbonala Warrior with United We Stand. And I don't think this is quite lethal. It's 700 plus 3900 plus 1500, but that is pretty, well, actually, Secret Barrel, hold up. Actually, Secret Barrel, I think, might make it lethal. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, that is lethal. Pre-mat as well. Oh, wait, they can't activate it because Jinzo's on field. Well, now they can. So that's a funny little thing. But, Secret Barrel's in hand. I'm just missing everything in this game. But either way, this is going to be pretty good. Secret Barrel should be able to wrap this thing up, I think, in the future. I guess they're saying it to play around Dust or MST, but I feel like you might just want to commit it at some point. But anyway, the Sakura got 2 armor is going to come down there. Stein going to come down as well, paying 5k for a Senji, and then setting the Secret Barrel and an meta there. Senji to stop the Dust Tornadoes, I believe, that they were trying to play around in the end phase there. But the Secret Barrel will get solemned, unfortunately. So, yeah, they won't be able to win that way. But they're able to attack into this Faith here, which will get Vive 1 Crystal back. The one spell, I believe no, I guess they had pre-map, but that's useless to them right now. So either way, Vivo and Crystal will win that one. So that seems like Saiti was actually the undefeated one in the event that far. But there's still one more game to watch with them. So let's dive into that one now. This is for all the marbles here, Saiti versus Vive 1 Crystal. And we'll have to see exactly who's able to win this. So it looks like Saiti's just going to open with a Scapegoat set. I mean, that's going to get used to stop the Dawn's Elude from hitting in here. And they're left with 3 tokens there. V1 Christo setting a Solemn and an MST. Heavy's going to come down, but Solemn's going to get chained to that. Saying like, look, my back row is important, even though it's an MST there. But unfortunately, that Solemn will drop them down low enough to actually lose the game from an Amazon Archer plus a United We Stand there. So very interesting stuff there. Going into game 2, Biter Shock. We get to see that in the deck. Very neat. This thing, when it's summoned out, it does get to spin back all set cards, so it can be used to sort of enable some OTKs. But it can be a bit awkward here. They're going to go for Last Will. And then Exiled Force pop the set Salug, which will then bring out a Sangan off the will to attack in for 1,000. And Vio and Christo setting a Morphing Jar, setting a couple there as well. And then going for True Nade here to bounce everything back. Then this Graceful will come down. And then you've got the Biter Shock to spin back that set. Bring out a Lily instead of a Stein. Interesting to see that. Maybe they decided out a Stein, or maybe they just didn't want to go for the Stein play because it was a bit risky and they didn't have lethal here. But either way, very cool to see. The Brain Con will also be able to suck up that Blade Knight and potentially get in for a fair bit of damage. True Nade here to set down the Blade Knight off that book, so that's going to be pretty good for them. They will be able to dodge that sort of lethal push there, and the Sasuke will be able to hit over the Amazon's Archer there, setting 2 more. And this is not quite the best hand for Saiti here. They're going to set 2. Dust Tornado is going to eat the provisions there, and then this 3,400 point of damage coming in hot. You still have enough for brain control, but it can be a bit awkward here. They're going to brain con the Sasuke, summon out a Cypher Soldier and buff up that Cypher Soldier, tack in to the tribe with the Sasuke. And that'll actually be the end of the game. So that's 200 plus 2950. So that will be lethal. And that's just a Solemn Judgment. If you Solemn Judgment the United We Stand, then you're still losing the game. If they had Solemn Judgmented the Cypher Soldier, they would not. Well, no, they wouldn't have lost the game because all you can do is United We Stand the Sasuke. But you don't know what the last card in hand is. So I think it does make some sense not to Solemn the Cypher Soldier. But I feel like if they're going for this, like you probably just Solemn it to be like, well, you're probably getting into lethal somehow, given what you play. But either way, you're very, very good stuff overall. And definitely check out the stream that JDZ did for this event if you want to see more of this deck and more of just these decks in general. So as a note, the coverage of the World Championship for GOAT is not yet up on Format Library or GOATformat.com yet, but you can watch these streams of those on JDZ's channel over at GOATformat.com, the YouTube channel. So I'll link to that in the description, as I mentioned before. And there are some great streams, so definitely watch them because there are some very, very exciting games that happen. So stay tuned for that. Next up, we got Treasure Hunters 4 Hunters Forever. This was held on the Treasure Trove Discord server in Treasure Format. And Treasure Format is the format held at the end of 2002. And it is the format right after Magic Ruler got released, or Spell Ruler, depending on, legality of that name. But it's a pretty fun format, very similar to Critter, but with some added jank, as well as some added sort of hand rip cards, which are not everyone's cup of tea. But I do think they balance out some of the, not oppressive elements of Critter, but some of the grindier elements of Critter. So not to say this format isn't grinding, because it definitely is, but it's a very, very cool format. So definitely check it out if you want. 19 people played, which is a pretty good amount for this type of event. And of course, the bot labeled most of the decks as tomato control, but to be fair, most of them were probably tomato control in the terms of what the bot defined that to be, right? Because they're generally good stuff decks with a tomato in it, a tomato engine. So as you can see here, this was the second place list that I had. I'm playing Tomatoes, going to Can Soldier, into Sangans, potentially Mass Sorcerer as well, into some things like that. So that's sort of like what tomato control is. And even if you're not playing things like Mass Sorcerer, you're still using Tomatoes to go into a ton of stuff, like in Lalo's winning list here. But yeah, this was a pretty cool event. I managed to actually get second place, which was pretty neat, playing sort of a good stuff list. And actually, my list is very, very similar to Dump Truck's third place list here. But also, I mean, similar to, LOL's, I mean, all these lists are very similar. There's some micro differences, like LOL only played one Banisher of the Light. Me and Dumptruck played two. I'm the only one who played Mass Sorcerer in the deck. So there's a bunch of variations between these things, but there's some very, very fun decks and very, very fun games. So I really did enjoy it. I'm not going to show the finals of this. It was actually streamed on PJ Darkness's channel, so I'll just refer you over there. I'll link the link to their channel in the description down below. But if you want to see some Treasure finals streamed there, that is the place to do so. Next up, we got the results of the Format Library Monster Mash Part 2 Killer Clowns from Outer Space tournament here. Only 8 people played, which is kind of unfortunate because Clown format is a very fun format. It's in the Arc V era, which, to be fair, when people go back to Retro Yu-Gi-Oh!, not a lot are playing from that time, but I do think it is a very fun format to explore. And I think it wasn't necessarily helped by the fact that Go For It World Championships were happening at the same time. But I did stream the entire event on my channel. It was very, very fun to stream. And looking at the deck type representation, it was very cool to see all these different decks. 2 people brought Clownblade, 1 person brought Infernoid, 1 person brought Burning Abyss, 1 on Necros, 1 on Gemini Zombie, 1 on Shadal, and 1 on Cosmo. So very cool to see that variety of decks there, although Clownblade did indeed win the final match there. You'll have to watch the final match to see how that actually played out. There were unfortunately some ruling issues there, but ultimately the result still stands, and Clownblade is very, very good in this format. I mean, it makes sense because the format's named Clown, but the deck will always have its doubters because it is just at its core a rank 4 toolbox deck, but sometimes that is good enough. So very, very cool to see that deck win the format it's named after. Next up, we've got the I Am Nerd Free Edison Online Tournament number 4. This was a very small Edison event with only 8 players in it, and it doesn't even have the finals replay here. But the reason I wanted to talk about it is because Diva Hero won, and I like Diva Hero. I like hero decks a lot, and the deck has not been doing too well in the Edison metagame as a whole, so it's just very neat to see this deck do well. And I'm pretty sure that the I Am Nerd YouTube channel did stream this event because, it's held in their community. So I figured that they streamed it. So definitely check out the I Am Nerd YouTube channel. I'll link that in the description down below if you want to both see that and also join in future events because they've got a Discord server that they play events in. So I believe you can join that if you join their Patreon, and they hold pretty regular events, I think. So yeah, definitely check that out if you want to play. But I'm just happy to see Diva Hero doing something in the Edison metagame because it had been quite a time since it actually did well. And of course, this is a small event, so that might have factored into it. If we look at the deck type representation, 2 Dragon Turbo, 2 Diva Hero, 1 Lightsworn Fairy, 1 6 Sam, 1 Hero Frog, 1 Fairy. So no one brought like Black Wings or Vayu. Yeah, no one really brought too many. I mean, Hero Frog's a meta deck, but like other than that, people didn't really bring like, some of the biggest decks in the format, but still it's cool to see Diva Hero take a tournament. Lastly, to finish things off, we got the Disc Commander Classic in 06. This was held on the Format Library Discord server. And this had 22 players, which was pretty good for a Perfect Circle event. Perfect Circle is very, very popular GX format by GX format standards, right? If you don't count GOAT, because GOAT is, of course, the most popular GX format, but people view it as a DM era format. This is in the era where GX actually feels like GX. There are GX archetypes coming out, and, things are starting to distinguish themselves just from the standard sort of DM sort of flavor that a lot of the earlier formats had. Now, Perfect Circle is a very interesting format because it is kind of a tier 0 format. It's not quite tier 0. People still have to experiment with it a little bit more, but Perfect Circle Monarch is the most popular deck by far and a very, very good deck. So it's kind of in a similar point as I'd say like GOAT is, where like there is a deck that consistently does very, very well at these events, just like Chaos Turbo and GOAT format does, but people can still bring other decks to win an event against it, right? And those decks can potentially compete. Now, with more experimentation over time, maybe Perfect Circle will reveal itself to be the tier 0 threat on a different level from something like Chaos Turbo and GOAT. But here, I think it is still sort of explored. So, we'll have to see if this sort of retains that status as we explore this format on the YouTube channel as well. But we haven't reached there quite yet, so I'll just have to cover this event and see what it tells us. So 11 people played Perfect Circle Monarch, so that's half the field. 2 people were on Gladiator based, and then 1 apiece on 6 Sam, Demise OTK, Light Beat, Zombie, Macro Monarch, Volcanic Gadget, Machine Beat, Bazoo Return, and Baboon Burn. So pretty interesting array of decks here. And if we look at the topping cut here, we got top 8. And in that top 8, we got Bazoo Return, Baboon Burn, 6 Sam, Perfect Circle Monarch, Perfect Circle Monarch, Perfect Circle Monarch, Glad Beast, and Perfect Circle Monarch. So half the top cut was made up of Perfect Circle Monarch, which does make sense given that half the event brought Perfect Circle Monarch. So it's kind of interesting there. But I find it cool that 4 people actually managed to bring decks that were not Perfect Circle. And I think it's pretty neat. And one of them actually managed to make it to the finals. So let's actually watch those finals and see how Gladbeast tried to take on the Perfect Circle Monarch deck. So diving in to this game, we've got Splevin versus Shabam 4. And this was Swiss, so, you know, whoever wins this just wins the whole thing. Splevin going to open up with a Sandgate plus Crush card, and that's going to Crush card. So Crush card do be Crush cardin'. You know, that's how it goes sometimes. They're going to set Solemn, the Dimpriz, and I guess 2 Solemns here. So that's something at least, but unfortunately, Secutor is not the Gladbeast you want to see here. You're able to Dimpriz one of the spies, but another spy will be able to get in. They'll set the Mirror Force and a Phoenix Wing. Smashing on the spy, drawing into Waboku. I mean, it's not what you want to see right now. You want to draw into a Gladbeast at some point, but unfortunately, they're just drawing into the battle traps. I mean, I guess you maybe don't want to draw into a Gladbeast under Crush Card, but Crush Card is now done. So you do have some potential way into that. But they're going to go for Stratos to pop the Solemn, unfortunately. That's kind of rough, but it is what it is. Exiled Force to pop the Hoplomus, and that's just going to be really rough. I mean, you do have the Mirror Force to clean that up a bit, and now you get the Laquari here. Solemn on the Mirror Force there, but Phoenix Wind will be able to spin that back there in the battle step. And then Crow on the Frog is going to be pretty decent. Spy will come out to hit in for 12. Just dropping them down to 12. The Laquari will be able to tag out here, but it might be too little too late. And it looks like they're actually not going to tag out. Although they do have a Waboku here to then go into a Murmilla, which will pop the Breaker here. So you're able to do something with that potentially. And then they're going to set a Dust Shoot, which is not quite good enough. I think maybe you needed to attack into the set, but if it was Spy, you'd lose the game. So it makes sense why they didn't do that. But I think you just needed to tag out that Murmilla because it's too weak. But they chose to bluff background. Unfortunately, Splevin sort of called that bluff. But they're going to go for a Rhoda here for a Stratos, but pulling will deal with that. Laquari can attack in for 18 and then tag out for something. They're going to tag into a Bestiary, which is not yet limited because there's no Geysers here. But they're able to bring out another Bestiary here, attacking for 15. Call for the Stratos, but DD Crow will deal with the Stratos that way. Going into Laquari for 2100. And then pass them back. Heavy will deal with the board, and then Ryza will spin that Laquari back on top of the deck, attacking in for 24 there. And then they're going to set a Phoenix Wing. Test Tiger coming down to target the Laquari, but Phoenix Wing will spin back the Laquari, so you don't get to do that. Setting a Bottomless because you have to, but unfortunately you don't really have the tools to deal with this board here. And this is one of the issues with Monarchs, is that like if you wind up in the situation, it's just a slow death by not even 1,000 cuts, but like death by like 4 or 5 cuts. And that Ryza was able to keep hitting in. Dim Prison, that is. We'll deal with the Ryza, but unfortunately, it probably won't be good enough. You're able to go for Mali here to try and get in for exact game, and that will indeed go through. So, Gladbeast put up a good effort, but unfortunately, the Perfect Circle Monarch deck was able to take them down. So, very, very cool stuff there. You know, if this video has sort of inspired you to try out Perfect Circle as well, then head on over to the Fortnite library for more Perfect Circle events. And there is a Perfect Circle Discord server as well, which is, I'll link in the description down below. But I hope you enjoyed, as always. These are always fun to make, just sort of covering what's coming in the future and also what has happened in the past. So if you enjoyed this, then let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know, again, if I missed any events that are coming up and where I can find those events in the future. Also, big shout out to my patrons, Rinsman, Porkchop, Brendan Donker, Tyler Compton, GeoMyFS, Scout Zero, and Dump Truck for making these videos possible. It means a lot that you all support me this way and encourage me to make more videos like this in the future. But that's going to do it for me in this vid. Check out the Discord that I mentioned. Check out the channels that I mentioned. Also, check out the YGO from Zero Discord as well for future events too. But that's going to do it for this video. As always, see you next time. Peace.